tonight for our school board meeting. Before things are called to order, the Limestone County Board of Education meeting is called to order. Notices for this meeting were properly posted and provided to those who requested direct notification. Do we have a call to order? We have a motion?
Let the record show everybody's here.
Yes. What now?
Just let the record show everybody's here.
Do it show that everybody is here? Yes. Call to order and everybody is present. We have, that's the roll call. We have prayer by Mr. Fudge.
Let's bow our heads. Father, we're so thankful for the children of Limestone County and the families that they come from, and we pray that you'll bless us as we deliberate on important matters that affect their future. We pray that you'll bless our school system and help us always to realize that you are in charge overall and above all. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'd like to take a moment to welcome the two new members to the Limestone County School Board, Ms. Kilgore and Mr. Fudge. And we will have a swearing in by Judge Woodruff.
I've got the honor and the privilege of administering an oath of office to District 1 elected member of the Limestone County Board of Education, Henry Fudge. The honor of submitting and administering the oath of office to Limestone County Board of Education District 2 to Greta W. Kilgore, and an oath of office for a new term as member of the County School Board for District 3 for Ronald R. Chris Jr. So we'll just do those in the order, if it's all right with the board, by districts 1, 2, and 3. If that's, everybody good with that? Okay. Do you have anybody with you, Mr. Fudge? Do you want them to stand with you or hold the Bible for the oath? That's totally up to you. It's your swearing in. You want to do that? Okay. And I'm not real sure where camera is, Layla. What's best for him and camera?
It's up there. Camera's back here.
Camera's here, so maybe you're going to have to left hand here and right hand up. So maybe if you'll stand and hold here, that would be great. Got that? So I will administer the oath of office to a member of the Limestone County Board of Education. Mr. Fudge, are you willing to accept that oath? Yes, sir. You'll place your left hand on the Bible and your right hand in the air and repeat after me. I, Henry Fudge.
I, Henry Fudge.
Do solemnly swear or affirm.
Do solemnly affirm.
That I will support the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of Alabama.
And the Constitution of the State of Alabama.
So long as I remain a citizen thereof.
So long as I remain a citizen thereof.
And that I will faithfully and honestly.
And that I will faithfully and honestly.
Discharge the duties.
Discharge the duties.
Of the office upon which.
Of the office upon which.
I'm about to enter.
I'm about to enter.
To the best of my ability.
To the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. Very happy for you. I need a signature. On that one, thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. Ms. Kilgore, was it yours? Is District 2? Do you have anyone with you?
Husband who's been shy.
Uh-oh.
There
There you go. There you go. It'll help balance the room. There you go. There we go. I've been asked to administer the oath of office, District 2, Limestone County Board of Education. Ms. Kilgore, are you willing to accept that oath of office? With your left hand on the Bible, raise your right hand and repeat after me, please. I, Greta W. Kilgore.
I, Greta W. Kilgore.
Do solemnly swear or affirm.
Do solemnly affirm.
That I will support the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of Alabama.
And the Constitution
citizen thereof,
so long as I remain a citizen thereof,
and I will faithfully and honestly
and I will faithfully and honestly
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
of the office upon which
of the office upon which
I'm about to enter,
I'm about to enter,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations. Very happy for you. Right there.
Huh? I don't know.
You need me to hold the Bible?
Yeah, come on.
No, I'm just
You
kidding.
stand up.
Thank you. Congratulations. Nobody? Nobody. Well, we'll work together. Well, I'm Mr. Chris, I've been asked to administer the oath of office to Limestone County Board of Education, District 3. Are you willing to accept that oath? I think so. You'll place your left hand on the Bible, raise your right hand, and repeat after me. I, Ronald R. Chris Jr.,
I, Ronald R. Chris Jr.,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Alabama,
and the Constitution of the State of Alabama,
so long as I remain a citizen thereof,
so long as I remain a citizen thereof,
and that I will faithfully and honestly
and that I will faithfully and honestly
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
of the office upon which
of the office upon which
I'm about to enter.
I'm about to keep going.
Already entered. Second term, right? To the best of my ability.
To the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
These will all be recorded a public record in the morning.
I'm good.
I'm good.
Superintendent's office is going to pick up copies for them as well as for all three of you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for being with
y'all.
us. Appreciate it.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you, and welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Do we have a motion for the agenda?
I'll offer.
Mr. Chris offers. Have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Young seconds. Do we have a vote? We have a discussion? Any discussion?
Just from
This is when you say you abstain.
that's right.
Thank you for 6A1.
I abstain.
You abstain from 6A1? Ms. Kilgore?
I as well.
You abstain as well? Do we have any further discussions? All those in favor? All accepted? And the motion passed. We'll start off with the superintendent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do have the Alabama Department of Public Examiners here. This is kind of their routine time of the year, maybe Christmas time, to visit Limestone County. So we'll turn it over to you at this time.
Thank you. My name is April Purser. I'm with the Examiners of Public Accounts. I'm the audit manager for this area. I'm here to present to you tonight the results of the audit report in accordance with the provisions of Act Number 2006-196, which is commonly referred to as the School Fiscal Accountability Act. I'm speaking today on behalf of the state of Alabama, and I'm covering the period October 1st, 2020 through September 30th of 21. So the standards that we applied during the audit is we conducted our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards and government auditing standards for the purpose of rendering an opinion on the financial statements and to determine whether the board complied with applicable laws and regulations. We also conducted an audit on the board's federal financial assistance programs in accordance with those same standards and the requirements of the uniform guidance. We issued an unmodified opinion on the board's financial statements as of and for the fiscal year ended September 30th, 2021. This means that the financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. In addition, we issued an unmodified opinion on the board's major federal financial assistance programs for the fiscal year that we tested this time, was the Child Nutrition Program Cluster, the Coronavirus Relief, and the Education Stabilization Fund. The local schools selected for comprehensive testing during this audit period were Blue Springs Elementary and Cedar Hill Elementary schools. All other schools were subjected to limited testing. We reported no findings in our report. The audit report is available on our website at www.examiners.alabama.gov under the Audit Reports tab for any who are interested in reviewing. So this concludes my presentation this evening. I would like to thank you all and your central office staff and your assistance and cooperation during the audit process, and we look forward to seeing you all again next year. Thank you so much.
With the
Thank
same
you.
report.
Yes, with the same report.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Superintendent,
Yes, sir.
before we go into number 2, I just want to thank our people that deal with our financial in the schools and at the central office. I think this is highly commended that we get this kind of report. I appreciate y'all for the work that all of y'all do.
Thank you, Mr. Glaze. It certainly does take a lot of work to have your finances in order, and Ms. Hubbard and company does a great job with that, and we certainly appreciate her hard work, and it's always great when you have no findings in your audit. So, this time we'll move to the state report card. All the board knows that we do receive a state report card for the district in each school, and Ms. Usry is going to talk a little bit about that tonight.
Okay, you should have a folder at your spot. It says Limestone County. If you will get your folder, the report cards are in there, or the report. The report cards are do not look exactly like this on the state website, but I wanted to put it in a easier to read format. We'll start with the district report card. The district report card came out this fall, and the achievement, you'll see that there's several different categories that the district was scored on. So the first thing you'll see is academic achievement. Academic achievement was based on our ACAP scores, ACAP alternate, and our ACT plus writing. So that means grades 3 through 8, as well as grade 11, count in that academic achievement, which counts 20% of our report card. Academic growth, they look at the test scores from 21 to 22. We kind of talked about that a little bit when we were talking about growth scores for ACAP and how the state decides what the growth categories are, but growth counts 25% of our report card. The graduation rate runs a year in the rear, and so that is actually the 2021 graduation rate. That is a 4-year cohort, so they look at those kids that started 9th grade and if they graduated within that 4-year time period. So graduation rate counts 30% for the district. CCRS, those are those college and career ready indicators to make sure our students not only are graduating but are ready for whatever they want to do post their graduation. So that would mean they could have benchmarked on ACT, any subtest. They could have had a qualifying score on A+. They could have made a qualifying score on ACT work keys. They could have done dual enrollment or have college credit, career tech credential, or military. There will be some more that are going to be added for this coming year as well. Those are the college and career ready are also for that graduating class of 2021. Chronic absenteeism, so this is the one where you want your score to be, we want our score to be low. The lower it is to 0, the better it is because we want as few kids absent as possible. That counted 10% of the report card, and that counted for us for grades kindergarten through 12th grade. So not just those tested grade levels, but kindergarten through 12th grade. And the last portion of the report card is EL proficiency. That comes from our access test that we give those students who are still not proficient in the English language. And the way they do that is each kid or each student has a score from the previous year, and then they have a target goal for the next year to make a year's worth of growth. If they make their growth target, that's how we get our points here. The state was goal was 52% this year was what they wanted our students. 52% of our students, they wanted them to hit their target goal this year. So as you go through, you can see that our public indicator score, that is a weighted score. I don't know if y'all remember when we talked about ACAP scores and how if you score a 2, you get partial credit. If you score 3, you get a point. If you score a 4, you get 1.25. So that is the weighted score there of 55. And then you can see the number of points that we earned for each category. So growth, we had a good growth, almost 90% was our score for growth. Graduation rate was 88. Our college and career ready was 73%. Chronic absenteeism was 9.88. And then our EL proficiency was at 44.96. So our overall report card score this fall was 81. One thing I wanted to point out is I did list some of our previous scores down there for you, but I also wanted to kind of explain we've had different tests nearly every year, so it's been very hard to compare apples to apples with what tests. So 2018 to 2019, the last time the state did a report card, we did not take ACAP. We actually took Scantron, which was actually a formative assessment that was designed for teachers to use to help guide instruction. In 2017-18, we also gave Scantron, and then in 2016-2017, we gave ACT Aspire. So we've had different assessments along the way. Our previous score for 18-19, the last time, was an 85. Our greatest decrease was in academic achievement. Our graduation rate was down 2%, and our CCRS was down 14% from where it was previously. We did have a 2% improvement in chronic absenteeism, which I think is amazing, especially considering all the sickness that we've had over the last year. Next, you can see that I have done all the schools for you. We'll start with the high schools. So you can see Ardmore High School, their overall score is an 84. And you'll see that you see the TSI, that means Targeted Support and Improvement. So schools were named, if they had a subgroup that scored below some of the lowest schools in the state, they were named Targeted Support for that particular subgroup. And Ardmore High School was named Targeted Support and Improvement for Students with Disabilities. Just means, and these schools are named every year, if their subgroup fell below what the all-student population fell in the lowest 5% of schools in the state. If you turn the page, you can see Clements High School's report card, and you can see the individual scores there. One of the things I forgot to mention on Ardmore as well, you'll notice that beside academic growth, instead of it counting 25% there, you'll see I have 30% in parentheses. These schools, if you do not have at least 20 students that are EL and those tested grade levels, that score is not reported. So that 5% for EL goes up to academic growth. So that's the reason Ardmore, Clements, and you'll see several other schools that their academic growth will be higher. But I put that in parentheses so you could see the difference. Clements High School was named an additional targeted support and improvement. These schools are named every 3 years. So this means when schools were named in 18-19, they also were named as a school that needed to work with their students with disabilities. And so that group has not shown 2 years of consecutive growth. And so now they are named ATSI, which means additional support and improvement. And those schools are only named every 3 years. You can see East Limestone, their report card score was an 88. And again, they also do not have 20 students that are EL in that tested group. And so their extra 5 points went to academic growth. Again, they were also named as targeted support and improvement, again, for students with disabilities.
can I ask a question?
Yes.
Back referring to Clemens compared to East Line, what's the chronic absenteeism is over twice Ardmore and East Limestone. Look what could be going on there.
I don't know. I've wondered if it was some coding issues because there were certain codes that we could use for COVID absences. And so I do not know for sure if that is what theirs was, but it is something that we discussed with principals at our last principals meeting. You know, and we have discussed it in the past to make sure we're coding absences correctly.
Because if that high numbers there is missing classroom instruction, then that's gonna make this 81.
Absolutely.
So, okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Y'all stop me anytime you have questions. Okay, Elkmont High School had a 79 report card. They were also named targeted support and improvement, again, for students with disabilities. They did have the EL proficiency, and you can see that score there, so they did have enough students. So this is the first high school that you see that actually has that EL proficiency score there. Turn the page, Tanner High School. Tanner High School previously was actually an additional targeted support and improvement school for students with disabilities. So they made 2 years of improvement out of that, and so they came out of being under additional targeted support and improvement. They scored an 82, which you can see that they have still made continual improvement even through these last several years. Their score this time was an 81. They are TSI this time, but it is for students with limited English proficiency. And that is not how they scored on their access tests. That is for how they scored on their ACAP or their ACT work keys. Because if you look their EL proficiency, they got their full 5 points. They were well above the 52% there, so they got their full 5 points. Where we need to work with them is making sure that they're doing well on our regular state assessments. West Limestone High School, their report card score was an 80. They are also TSI for 2 different categories. The first category is students with disabilities, as well as the Hispanic and Latino subgroup. They were ATSI for students with limited English proficiency, but they made 2 years of improvement in that category, so they came out from under being an ATSI, and so now they're just named TSI. The next one is Alabama Connections Academy. Their report card score is a 72. They were originally, when ATSI was named in 1819, they were named for multiple groups, black, white, Hispanic, Latino, and economically disadvantaged. They have made improvements for 2 years in all of those subgroups, so they came off of ATSI, and now they are just targeted support and improvement for students of 2 or more races. As you can see, they were not on the report card for 16-17, but you can see that they have steadily made some increases there. The next page starts our elementary schools. Our elementary report card is a slightly different. Their categories, they don't have as many categories as a high school does. So their academic achievement counts 40% of their report card. Their academic growth counts 40%. Chronic absenteeism counts 15%, and then EL proficiency counts 5%. As you can see here, Blue Springs did not have enough for EL proficiency, so that 5% went to academic growth, which made academic growth be 45% for them. Their score was an 84, and they were also named TSI for the subgroup students with disabilities. Cedar Hill Elementary had an 83 on their report card. In 2018-2019, they were ATSI for students with disability, and they will remain ATSI for students with disabilities because that particular subgroup has not made 2 consecutive years' worth of growth. Creekside Elementary had a score of 91. And you can see that their EL proficiency also went to academic growth, and if you notice, they had 100% growth category, so I thought that was something great to celebrate for them. Creekside Primary receives the exact score of Creekside Elementary because they're a feeder school, and their second grade is tested, but it does not go under academic achievement. It's only used for that growth target. Except for chronic absenteeism. So the chronic absenteeism does belong to Creekside Primary, so that is their K2 students. And that score at the top, I see a typo there. That should be 91 at the top.
It looks different to me.
Elkmont Elementary scored a 76. They are also ATSI for students with disabilities, again, because they did not make 2 years of consecutive growth from our previous report card in 18-19. And you can also see that their 5% EL proficiency also went to academic growth. Johnson Elementary had an 84, which is slightly up from their 18-19, but in 18-19, Johnson was an ATSI school for students with disabilities, but they have made 2 years of consecutive growth, and so they were able to come out of underneath additional targeted support and improvement. Piney Chapel Elementary had an 81 on their report card, and they do have the EL proficiency, and you can see that they had their full 5 points for EL proficiency. Sugar Creek Elementary scored an 86, and if you look back at their scores from 16 up, you can see that they have steadily made great growth. I mean, 16 points really in 4 years worth of report card scores. I know it's more years than that. In 18-19, they were named ATSI for students with disabilities, and they were able to make 2 years worth of progress with those students, and so of continuous growth, and so they were taken off of that. They were able to exit the ATSI, and they also, if you look, they received full points for their EL proficiency. So they were at 72.73, and the goal for the state only asked to be at 52, so they well exceeded the goal for their EL population. Tanner Elementary report card was a 74, and they were named TSI for students with disabilities. Again, you can also see that for EL proficiency, they scored their full points there. So our graduation rate for 22 is already done, as well as our college and career ready indicators. So we already know roughly what that will be for our next year's report card. So graduation rate's looking like it's going to be 86.44 for the class of 22. The college and career ready indicators look like they're going to be 68.67%. So that is something that we are really focusing on this year, but that will be our class of 23 before we'll see those scores improve. We're doing a lot of things with work keys. We put that even in our math modeling class for the first 6 weeks. They work on skills that directly relate to the work keys test that our seniors take. We also this year have CTE completer as well as youth apprenticeship that will give students other opportunities and ways to be able to have that college and career ready indicator. We've also been working with Alabama Connections to make sure we have ways that they can also make sure that their students have opportunity to be able to get a CTE credit. Our scores are not where we want them to be. We're doing several things to work on the academics. We've got lots of things planned. We've really been working with each of our schools on Tier 2 instruction. So the students that do not get it during Tier 1, they get an extra dose of whatever material that they're not understanding. Those are the kids that we really feel that can move our scores, and we've been talking, we've had meetings with principals as well as instructional supervisors and reading specialists, really discussing like how can we best do this, what kids do we need to focus on. We've really been trying to look at the data and see, you know, where does each student need that individual help to help boost them over. One of the things that at our last principals meeting we really talked about, we got in groups and we let them discuss and talk about whatever group that was their lowest, you know, what are some things that we could do and try, and what were some of the things that the schools that had had some success over the last several years with specifically maybe students with disabilities, what were some of the things that they had done. And so we had some of those conversations to try to make sure we're working on that. I'm very excited about our January 3rd PD Day because we are able to offer lots of sessions. Melissa and her team are working to offer several things in special ed that's for the general ed teachers, so it's not just for special ed teachers. So we feel like that is a piece that, you know, I kind of say all the time, you know, EL and special ed can waive. They can waive EL services. They can waive special ed services. They cannot waive the general education services. And so I think that we need to do what we can to support our general ed classroom teachers in being able to provide those supports and strategies for students with disabilities and any of our strugglers to help improve our scores. But our teachers will have like 4 sessions that day, and so they will be able to go to different sessions that day. We're working on things in math as far as looking at those proficiency scales. I know I showed you those to kind of show you what does a kid have to do to be able to score a 4 or perform at a level 4. And so we'll be able to have some sessions for that so our teachers have activities that also match those higher level standards. So any questions about the report card?
Thank you, Allison.
Okay. We'll move on. Of course, we've heard from the audit presentation tonight, but we've also had a couple other visits this fall. We had an OCR visit last week and the exit conference that took place on Friday. I'll tell you that it had been 19 years or so, I think, since we had our last, is that right, John? 19 years since we had our last visit from OCR. But they went around, looked at all of our CTE programs, looked at our buildings to make sure that they were accessible. And just a few things were mentioned. They really want us to look at our grievance policies, complaint policy. Even though we have those policies in place as a board, some of our employees may need to know how to or who to address when they have a concern. So that's something that we're going to look at. They're all spelled out as far as who they go to if they have a concern, but we want to make sure that everyone's aware of who they need to talk to. Signage, Steve did a great job on making sure that we had signage, handicap accessibility in our parking lots and so forth. There was a comment about signage on handicap stalls, for example, in the restroom, wanting those. So Steve is taking care of that. A lot of these areas that were mentioned can be corrected right away. It doesn't take long, and we'll have that opportunity to correct these before the final report is out. But I do want to thank John Wilson and Dr. Tribble for really putting all the paperwork together, getting ready for the audit, and it went very smoothly. Mr. Wallace took the consultant around the county, and they visited all of our facilities. And I will tell you, they were very complimentary on how well the facilities in Limestone County are kept. They really felt like we kept our buildings, even though some of them are older. They felt like they were in really good shape. And they also, of course, Ardmore was singled out as being well kept, and they really liked the way that Mr. Bryan is keeping Ardmore High School. So we were happy to hear that. And then this made me very happy, and I think it'll make all the board happy as well, is when they talked to students, students told them that they were well taken care of at school, and they felt like they were safe, and they felt like there was someone they could confide in. And so, and that came from Hispanic students, African American students. They really felt like they had individuals they could confide in at the school. So I think that should make us all feel good. And they were complimentary across the board of every school that they visited for that. So we were very happy to hear that. And all in all, a good visit from OCR. Then we had, of course, the compliance monitoring, which took place a couple weeks before that, a few weeks before that, and they looked at a lot of different areas as well. We did have some issues, for example, with where fire extinguisher had not been checked, and so that was one area that we need to make sure, and we took care of that right away. They had to be inspected, of course. Some of the kitchen hoods, the fire extinguishers had not been checked, so we wanted to make sure we followed up on that. And like I said, we don't have the final report yet, but all in all, just a really good report from the individuals that visited our school system. I will call out federal programs for the compliance monitoring. Very good report for federal programs, all the inventory, and as you know, we've received a lot of inventory lately with federal programs, and so we were very excited to know that was all accounted for, and one of the only districts to receive that commendation, so for federal programs. So we certainly thank Allison and Mary for making sure that all of that was accounted for. And we don't have a final report on this yet. We have some time to make whatever corrections we needed to make. But all in all, our folks did a great job. So I thank them for hosting and taking care of these individuals and making sure that our system is where we need to be. So thank you.
Good job.
Any questions on OCR, compliance monitoring, anything? Okay. Moving on, we'll move on to Johnson Elementary construction. As the board knows, we are going to be involved in a construction project in the near future, hopefully bidding that maybe in February. Classroom addition, and we have Chapman System with us tonight, and we welcome them and look forward to their presentation. So we'll turn it over to you guys at this point.
Thank you for having us, Dr. Shearhouse and the board. My name is Mike Sprader. While they set up, Christine Robbins and Amber McKinley is going to walk you through the presentation. Good to see you all again. Everything's going well for Elkmont and the Fieldhouse projects. As Dr. Shearhouse said, the Johnson project, we've got drawings to the state issued this week. So we met our final deadline to issue before the end of 2022. So the Department of Construction Management will review the drawings for the next month, and then we'll issue drawings probably in the middle of January for the bid documents. And then hopefully everything goes well, and we're on schedule to receive bids in the middle of February. So, Christine?
Thank you. So like you said, my name is Christine Robbins. I'm with Chapman System. We have been working with the board and administration since about early summer, trying to come up with an addition for Johnson Elementary School. So we're excited to show you what we have. To start with, we'll just orient with the existing elementary. And so most of you are probably familiar with this, but this is the existing school. It was built in phases, with the most recent being completed in 2001. You can see here we have the main lobby, media center, cafeteria, and gymnasium with the classrooms along the wings. So one of the first things that we had to do when we started the project was look at more of a master plan of the site. There's a lot of acreage out there, and so we wanted to make sure that we not only got the building right, but we placed it on the site to take into account future growth and expansion, and that we created a campus and a building as a whole. And so the culmination of those studies led us to placing our addition to the south of the existing building. It'll be placed here to the south, connected with a corridor, and this is going to come in kind of where the media center is, if you're familiar with the building. You can see we've created kind of a horseshoe in the front and the back. The materials are going to closely match the existing, so it looks like one completed building. The brick and the roofing wall will be the same, so it's got a cohesive feel to it. So we wanted to make sure that we not only got the building right, but also the site and its circulation. And the two biggest pieces of that were the car line loop and the lack of parking. So what we've done for car line, the front will remain the same with pre-K dropping off in the front. The buses will still drop off on the side and empty out onto Highway 31. But we have changed the back car line. The existing car line route, you come off of Johnson, go along this back road. Kids get out on the bad side of the car and have to cross in front, and then they exit back out. And so what we have done, you will still enter off of Johnson, but we've created a larger loop. If you're familiar with the site, it goes all the way back to where the baseball fields are. It'll be a double-stacked loop to provide some more queuing space, and then you will loop back around, come up to the back of the building. The kids will get off on the correct side of the car. We've extended the canopy extents, and so you'll have more canopy coverage for drop-off and pickup. And then what this has allowed us to do is to also create about 65 new parking spaces, and so that will help alleviate some of the congestion there. As part of this project, we are also going to be updating the new sign. We'll be doing a new digital sign on the highway with a new updated look. And so everything we've talked about thus far is what's called a base bid. That is in the project, it's in the drawings, and that will be part of the project. But you can also add alternates, and alternates it's like a laundry list of things that you would like to have, but you don't know if you'll have the money to have them, and so we put them in the drawings, we get a price for it, and then we decide if we can afford it. So one of the alternates we have is on the site, and we call it alternate 3, and it's to pave this bus line and service road to repave that. So we'll get a price for it and see if we can afford to do it. So it's an overall floor plan to orient ourselves. Again, we've got the main lobby, the media center, cafeteria, and gymnasium, and then all of the classrooms along there. So our addition is, like I said, to the south, and we will connect with an enclosed corridor to the existing building. The new building is going to be about 24,000 square feet. It's going to have 16 classrooms. The classrooms are going to be just under 800 square feet. And compared to the existing building, that's going to be about the size of the largest classroom in the existing building. The classroom layout, they'll all be a uniform layout. You will enter at the back of the classroom. Along the back wall, you'll have a series of upper and lower cabinets with a teacher's desk, and each classroom will have its own storage room for the teachers to use. You'll have a teaching wall at the front, and then along the corridor, you'll have a series of built-in cubbies for the students to put their backpacks and lunchboxes and whatnot. There'll also be 4 half classrooms, and these are for kind of those breakout spaces if you need reading, speech, or smaller classes. This would be where that can happen. And then we've also made part of the wing a storm shelter. This is a code requirement. An Alabama law requires shelters to be added anytime you add any classroom space. This will be sized to fit and accommodate the entire school population, so all the kids can go in there in a storm event. It'll be FEMA rated and FEMA compliant. So I mentioned alternates earlier. We've got 2 more alternates that are in the existing building. The first one is upgrading the finishes in the hallways and main lobby and cafeteria. And so this is going to be putting new flooring, new paint, new baseboard, upgrading ceilings and lights to try to give the existing building a facelift. So that's alternate 1 scope, and then alternate 2 is the same idea for finishes, but here we're putting them in the classrooms and kind of the admin offices and back support areas. So to talk about the finishes, we have Amber McKinley.
Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about the interiors. Thank you. The addition part, we will have LVT flooring in the project. So this is the luxury vinyl tile. It's the same flooring that we're using in Elkmont. It does not have to be waxed. So that will be quite an upgrade for the rest of the school. We will also incorporate some of the Johnson blue, so you can kind of see that in the pattern. We've got alternating stripes with a couple different colors of blue. We also have a lighter shade of blue in the classrooms and accents in the corridor as well. As Christine mentioned, a couple of our alternates that we're doing is to upgrade the flooring and paint, still and finishes in the rest of the school. So you can see if those alternates are approved, you can see this pattern continues that new flooring throughout the rest of the school. So that would be the same flooring, new paint, new ceiling tile, etc. And then alternate 2 would be doing the same in the classrooms as well. So the goal for the alternates is to get the best bang for our buck. So trying to bring it up to speed, make it a little more updated without spending a ton of money, and we think that the flooring and paint will do the majority of that. The top picture in the center here, this shows our proposed paint scheme. So that's a picture of what's existing with our new paint colors kind of overlaid on top of it. So the new paint will be quite a bit brighter, and then we'll have a wainscot with the gray paint below that you see here, and a little bit of the light blue color throughout the corridor to add more color. The lobby pattern is right here. So again, similar pattern is what we're showing in the corridors, adding in the Johnson blue, a little bit of the accent colors as well. One other thing that we're proposing is add in tile portals at the library, the lobby, and the cafeteria. And so this will just be a wayfinding element. It's this green color here. It's a soft green, but it's a tile that'll have some signage for wayfinding saying library, lobby, cafeteria. And so that'll be something just to add a little bit more color and break up the space on the corridor. Otherwise, the signage will all be existing here. We are replacing ceiling tile, as I mentioned, and some lighting throughout, but finish upgrades for alternate 1 and 2 would be primarily finishes. Does anybody have any questions? It's a lot of information. All good? Yeah, we've enjoyed working on it. We appreciate the opportunity. This has been a fun one. All right. No questions. Thank you, guys.
I thought it might be easier if I went through the one.
Maybe.
I won't ask that then.
Bradley, this was your job. You were in charge of the screen. You were in play. You weren't here to take care of it.
I'm trying to get things for Ardmore through our maintenance guy over there. So.
Thank y'all very much for the presentation.
Okay, and moving on, we'll go to item 6. We do want to talk a little bit about coaches obtaining their CDLs. This is just the start of discussion. I did get Sherry to go back and look at when this was discussed before. It was discussed back in January 15th of 2019. So that's when there was some mention and talk about requiring some coaches to drive. And the way the recommendation was require each sport, band, or activity group that uses buses for transportation have a coach or sponsor obtain an active license. Any parent, assistant coach, or non-regular bus driver would fulfill this agreement, and it would go into effect 1/16/2019 with a 2-year adjustment period. And so Rusty and I have talked about this in detail. We really don't have, I think, Rusty, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we have 3 coaches that have their CDL. And so we haven't had a whole lot of progress being made since 2019 on this. So we were trying to kind of brainstorm and find some ways that we could get more coaches to get their CDL. And Mr. Bates looked at other systems, and there were some other systems that had more success with getting their coaches their CDL, and that kind of went back to, withholding some supplements, possibly, if they did not get their CDL, and that seemed to have more progress. They made better progress than we have as a district with getting coaches to get their CDL. But
just so I understand, we didn't actually make a rule that said the coaches had to get CDLs, right? They had to have a designated person with a CDL for each team.
For their team, that was what, yes, sir.
Yeah. So do we have a measure for that? 0? We don't 3. The same 3? Well, that's bad.
So we're looking for a way to get more, and we're having a harder time finding bus drivers. We need bus drivers on their regular routes, and we still want to use bus drivers in every situation we can. But there are times where we can't find someone to drive, and I've always thought it's more dangerous to pull a bus driver off a regular route than it is for a person to drive one way, an hour away or 30 minutes away or 45 minutes away. But how we approach this is open. Just kind of wanted to get some feedback from the board as far as, what direction we wanted to go with this. We talked about, on the positive side, if a coach got their CDL, and I know I talked to Mr. Glaze a little bit about the legalities of, paying and not paying, or, even trip inspection. So we've got a lot to look at. But even looking at if a coach did drive, then we would compensate them for driving. So that would be, a reward really for getting their CDL. They could, when they had to drive, could make some additional money. And I suppose there are times where we need folks to drive regular routes too. And I know we do have some teachers that are currently under contract, right, to drive buses in our system as well that drive every day. But it is a contract type situation when they drive. But that was just some of the discussion we had. Rusty, you want to fill in anything on that?
When we previously addressed this, there was basically no bite to it. We didn't have any means of I hate to use the word punishment, but there was no way of keeping up with this other than just hoping they all abided by it, to which, as you can tell, we just don't have that. So since that happened, when we went through compliance monitoring last month, the state pupil transportation came in, and one of the big questions that they ask of us is how are you getting to athletic events, band events, competitions for VOTEC, all those different things that we do. How are you getting to these competitions? And I said, well, the kids drive. Well, they ride with their parents. Very seldom do we carry a bus. And so other systems have already started compliance monitoring. That's the same thing we're starting to ask them as well. So there's a push going across the state to put kids on buses as opposed to driving their own cars, riding with each other, or even riding with their parents at times. So that was one of their concerns. They asked for Dr. Shearhouse and I to sit down and do a conference call with them. At that point, Dr. Shearhouse and I sat and talked. We came up with some ideas, and so I did talk to them, and they really liked our ideas. They told us that similar systems were doing what we were talking about doing, and so that's where this led to bringing it before the board to talk about ideas and kind of brainstorm a few minutes about what we needed to do as a system in order to have those student athletes, those band students, all these students that are going to these competitions, having them on buses. Buses are the safest form of transportation, period. There's nothing safer than a school bus right now. That's not me just telling you this. That's federal facts right now by the Transportation Safety Board, that buses are the safest form of transportation that you can have. So that being said, obviously that pushes toward riding buses.
Well, at our winter conference that we just went to, that was one of the hot topics in one of the sessions. There was 3 attorneys there that are agreeing with what you're saying, that they need to be, that we as parents and we don't need to be hauling kids. But one of my questions is, how many instances that I recall, one, I think it was at West Limestone, where kids didn't have a bus driver to go to some event. That was a couple of years ago.
Elkmont band, yeah.
Band.
Elkmont
That was a
band.
couple of years ago.
Yeah.
2 years ago was Elkmont Band,
But-
which led us to the
Yeah.
January meeting that Dr.
Okay.
Strasser.
But that, we hadn't had that since, have we?
We have not. Now,
So we're getting bus drivers somewhere.
well,
Or-
we're really not. We are getting them, but here's what we've had to do to adjust. We have just made a blanket order across the county, across our district.
Yeah.
No extracurricular activities will leave before 4:15. So we've just put a blanket order in place with our principals. We've told them, don't ask unless you're going to a state playoff or unless it is an absolute necessity. If you have to leave before 4:15, get a charter.
Okay, well, that was one of,
That's what we've told them, and that's the reason why we haven't had the same situation as we had with Elmont Band.
okay, so that was one of the things that came up in that winter conference was, you got teachers that are driving buses.
Yes, sir.
And if we do coaches, if they're driving buses and they're pre-tripping their bus like they're supposed to,
Right.
they can't legally pre-trip that bus during their 7-period planning period and get paid to be a bus driver. But there's some way you can do that. There's a legal way to do that. And is that the contract you're talking about?
Yes, sir. Well, and it's basically, it is a contract, but it's a contract for services. It's extra services, not on Ms. Hubbard right
Well,
now.
how are we getting by the fact that they're supposed to be their planning period, they're supposed to be doing their planning for their classroom? How are we dealing with that?
Well, they're doing it at the end of that planning period. So what
What do
we,
you mean at the end of after the planning period's over with?
at the end of the planning.
Okay, well, that's illegal according to what we were told.
We're trying, what our principals are doing is trying to give them time, once their planning time is over. And of course, different schools have different schedules. I mean, it might be 52 minutes, might be 53 minutes. So they're putting in either a break of some kind.
Okay, so they're only required to get 30 minutes of planning time, is that correct? Okay.
Ms. First required to answer that.
Yeah, that's, okay.
Yeah, and that's what elementary teachers get with their kids in physical education. So a high school teacher can get that 30 minutes. And that's what I
And
mean.
then still
by
have time to do that.
At the end of
Okay.
their planning period, they can do that. We do have, trying to think offhand, we have one at West that drives.
Well, I know we're gonna do this legal. We're gonna do it legal.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I don't wanna
Yeah.
try to go under the radar. That's not, we wanna do this upfront and legal because, in the end, the reason why we're doing this is for safety.
Right.
I mean, we want our kids to safely get to ball games. I think back to about years ago when East Limestone had the 2 cheerleaders that were killed on their way to a basketball game. So that has rocked our county before. I mean, this has been many, many years ago, but we've been very fortunate. we have kids that leave school at 2:15 during their athletic period to drive to games that start at 4, and they're leaving, they're driving in their car, and girls are driving together and boys are riding together, and it's very dangerous. And, you know, I'm sure the lawyers told you the legality of that. It's not in our favor. So what we need, you know, we just need to correct some things if we can, and get them on those school buses. And we don't have the drivers. Now, we do have them after 4:15. Our drivers have stepped up because of what you've done. You've raised the rates. Some that's helped, and that has encouraged a lot of drivers to come out. However, that's after 4:15. The problem we're running into now is that needing to leave at 3 o'clock, needing to leave at 2:30, and we have buses, we just don't have a driver.
Right.
And that's what we're running into now. And as Dr. Sherrill said it, we've told them we're not leaving at 4:15 because we don't want to pull. Right now, we're doubling routes as it is. We have 4 openings right now that I can't fill. One of them is getting filled tonight when you get the personnel, hopefully, so that will get us down to 3. So, but we don't have any drivers there, so we're having to double some routes anyway. And then coupled with the fact that you're going to send a driver to a football game or to a baseball game or something like that, then we're going to double that route too. So it's safer to leave those drivers where they are until after that 4:15. Why this is important now, obviously, is with compliance monitoring. The state would like to know, or people in transportation would like to know what we're going to do about it. Because apparently from what they talked about, those same lawyers that you all had in your meetings are the same lawyers that they've talked to. And so they would like to know what we're going to do about it. The other thing is scheduling. As our schools, with 6 high schools, we're going to have to be aware of this when we schedule upcoming seasons starting next year. Because we're going to need to be able, coaches are going to have to work together to send teams in the same area if they can. It will take away that we'll send middle school over here and JV over here and varsity over here. We'll start putting things together just simply because we can send them on one bus.
Well, here's the one I worry about, Rusty, is say the golf team. How many golf teams do we have in the county?
6.
Okay.
Well, 12. We have
boys and girls. But how many? Say it.
Probably 6
Who's
to
got
8
the
players.
smallest amount? Who's got the?
We have 2 that have just 1 or 2, like 1 girl or 2 girls.
Okay. Now
and
my
then
question
the boys
is,
they'll play together.
that's a non-generating revenue sport.
That's correct.
How is that? Who's going to pay for that?
Well, that's what we were talking about as a district, that we would,
Dr. Sherrill.
take on that, take on that
I think that's good.
responsibility.
Yeah, appreciate that.
It's no problem. It's a donation.
So that's we got a plan to look
Wonderful.
at that. The other, I got 2 more questions, and I'll be through. All right, our current bus drivers are required to have a commercial driver's license and that school bus endorsement.
Yes, sir.
Okay, who pays for that?
Currently, right now, they pay to get their license.
Okay.
They pay for their current physical. Practically all of them, about 90% of them, we pay to train.
Right.
And so the only difference there with coaches is that we would have those coaches come in. So it costs $45 to get your initial, the first test.
Right.
It's $15 each test after that. So they're going to make up 4 tests. Now that is if they don't fail in. If they fail them, they're going to have to turn around and pay $15 additional and take the test again. So all of that would be on the coach or the prospective coach driver. Once they finished and got their license, then they could take that, bring it to the school, do a reimbursement from their program that they're driving from. So you're not talking $100 or less, depending on how many.
Personally, I don't agree with that.
Well,
Because
that would be something we
because
could add into that.
I don't think we ought to reimburse the coach if we're not going to reimburse that regular driver. That's my own personal feelings. Because I think that regular driver is just as important to this system as that coach carrying his kids to the That's just the way I feel about it. I may be the only one who feels that way.
Well, the only reason why we tied it back to a program is because that's the reason why they're getting their license. So if it's a band director, you know, and they're getting their license because they're a band director, let that band pay for those tests. Of course, we're gonna handle all the training, all that's in-house.
But you got non-revenue programs where they gonna reimburse from if you do that. I mean, you know, you got.
Well, and you're not talking about a lot of money, you can maybe $100 depending on how well they're prepared.
But how many coaches you got?
Well, like in a band, you would have 2.
No, I'm talking about county. If you're doing this countywide.
Oh, I mean, you're talking, we'll probably close to 300.
So that's a lot of money.
Oh, yeah, if the county
Right,
does it,
right.
if the district does, yes.
Okay, that's all the questions I got.
Well, I know a lot of places, Earl, they, you know, like a bus driver pays up front, and then once they drive so long, then they reimburse that part. I mean, I've seen that done before.
Which I personally, I wouldn't have a problem with reimbursing, because you got to get those licenses renewed every 4 years?
No, so
Or
you have
is
to,
it
you have to
2 years?
recertify every year.
Okay.
But that's free.
That's free, but when they go to when they come down here and get their license renewed,
They have to
that
pay.
CDL's an additional charge above what a regular driver.
That is correct, yes. That is correct.
I'm just going to say, as a former coach, there's a lot on their plate already. And if you're going to force them to get this CDL, I feel like it should be paid for by the school or whoever they're driving for or their whatever. But has anybody asked the coaches why they are resisting?
I have spoken to several. In just about all of our cases, it's mainly the biggest fear is once they get their license, the same way our principals are that I've tried to encourage them to get their license. The big fear is once you get your license is that I'm going to be calling you every afternoon, hey, please just go drive this route for me. Just play. I promise, you know, they do not want that. So what we've tried to tell our coaches is we don't need them to drive routes. We just need them to be on standby. This is not something that's option number 1. We're not going to just say, oh, you're leaving at 4:30. Hey, I got you a bus out there. It's all yours. This is option 2. This is our backup plan. We want our drivers. I do not want to cut our drivers out of driving any field trips. Our drivers rely on that money. They budget that money, and a lot of them do that. This is their livelihood. So the last thing I want to do is cut our drivers out by any means. However, we all know that there's going to be times when these teams, you know, we had just like today, we had a 4 o'clock game. We had East at Ardmore, and so those kids left before school got out. We've got West and Clements. We've got these different schools that are having to leave early to get to these 4 o'clock ball games because they're playing 4, 5:30, and 7. So we get them out of there at a decent time at night. So you've got stuff like that going on, and if we put them on a bus like the state would like us to, we need somebody to help us drive and be able to leave at 3 o'clock. And we just don't have those drivers.
Does this affect groups outside of sports teams?
What Dr. Sherhouse and I talked about was anybody in competitions, because that's the word that the state uses. So it would be like Mr. Green and I have talked. It'd be all of your tech organizations,
Cheerleaders.
Cheerleaders, everybody.
Scholars
Band,
Bowl.
any competition, Beta Club that goes to Montgomery.
Any idea how many more bus trips we're talking about in the course of some given period of time?
Dr. Sherhouse, he had asked me to come up with an estimate. The best way I could do it is to give you an example. So last year, this past fall, during football season, we had a little over $14,000 worth of trips. That's driver, bus, and everything. So that's a little over $14,000 for all of our football teams. That's middle school, JV, varsity, going everywhere, because those football games are all on bus.
Did that count band?
That it. So band, we ran all the band. I ran all the band numbers because I can separate them in our system. So I did our bands as well. Now, these are not overnight trips. We had a few band overnight trips that weren't in there. But all of our band day trips, which is our competitions and all the football games that all 6 of our bands went to, was a little over 21,000. So the busiest time of year that we have, you're looking, $35,000, $36,000.
Is that, I'm sorry, is that what they paid? That's what bands paid for that bus?
Yes, sir.
But that's not the true cost of those buses.
Yeah, that's the mileage and driver and everything.
Okay.
You said the busiest time of the year, but that wouldn't be the busiest time of the year if we changed to this, right? Basketball season would be, right?
No, sir, it'd be baseball, softball,
Baseball,
soccer.
Okay.
That would be our busiest. Spring would be our busiest time. That would become the busiest. But right now, all we have to look at is football and band, because that's all that take buses to everything right now. So that's the only thing we have to look at.
Okay, and I just have one more question, and this goes back to what Mr. Glaze was asking about when they're checking their buses and stuff. If you've got a coach who has to leave to go drive this bus at 2 o'clock, how are we affecting that with their are we doing what you said by?
Well, I think
That coach is leaving anyway.
right. You're going to have coaches leaving at that point anyway, so to go to the game.
But it all goes back to the planning period of elementary and high school society. So, now, honestly, you know as well as I've been in high school that high school teachers do get a longer planning period. However, that 30 minutes is there.
Is what they're
How long does the pre-trip usually take?
10 or 15 minutes.
Okay.
I mean, it depends. It depends if there's no problems.
Takes a lot longer if the tires are flat.
Yeah, I think so.
If there's nothing wrong, it can get longer.
Well, being more familiar with your bus makes a difference. If you're not driving a bus, it's going to probably take 20, 25 minutes. If you're not, I would say, if you're not used to driving it. But
There would be absolutely no difference in a licensed coach or licensed driver / coach as one of our bus drivers. It would be the same training, the same recertification. They would have to have a current physical and health card stating that they were physically able by a physician stating that they could drive a bus. There would be absolutely no difference. I know that's been some of the rumors that Dr. Strauss and I have heard as well, that they're not a real bus driver. Well, they will be a real bus driver. They may not have a route, but they will be a certified bus driver. And who knows? Like, the encouragement is sort of some of these retire out of coaching. Now, since they already have their license, we'd like to pull them on over, to driving a bus. The other fear that we talked about is not just only the people, us begging them to drive, but most people don't realize buses are not like the buses that we all rode. It's not a stick in the middle and we're not grinding gears to find out. Buses today drive exceptionally well, especially the new ones that we have, and they drive exceptionally well. Most people do find out that it's not as difficult and it's not as scary as they once anticipated, and so that's our hope.
I know fear is of the unknown because it's something new we're talking about. I know other districts are doing it, but I think first and foremost, and I know that takes time, but we need a draft of what the expectations are if we go this route or enforce coaches to get CDLs. I mean, we all need to understand that it doesn't matter if it's a bus driver driving that regular bus driver driving that bus, or if a coach driving that bus, you still got to have supervision on the bus, there and back. I think that kind of needs to be laid out so that we can see it in writing to understand and make sure we're not overlooking something. I don't know. I just think about wear and tear. I know there's good, but I'm just trying to be the devil's advocate. You got wear and tear on more buses. Do we have the buses available? how much money is ALSDE compliance monitoring going to kick in since they want us to do this? What's their percentage in this? You know, so that's what I'm
The only
afraid of.
answer we have tonight
And
is
then,
their percentage.
and then the fear is, you know, if we do this in 5 years from now, everything plummets financially. What are we going to do? Are we going to take
Sooner than that.
teachers out of the classrooms, or our support out of the classrooms, or to pay for transportation, or are we going to put it back on? Because in the past, when we ran out of money, we just told the schools and the programs, you got to worry about it and come up with the money. Well, that's not fair to the parents or the students, because now we're selling candles and
Well, I
candy
think
bars
that's
again.
where we, don't you think that's where we went? Because I think that we put more things, as money got tighter, we put more things on the schools to try
Right.
to do. And we're trying to help out a little bit with that, but also know it's a long-term commitment. I think that to me it's foreign not having transportation, you know, for all those events. But I know it's according to where you're from. Some districts do it where they provide transportation for everyone. Some other districts require each team to pay for it. And I know it's done
I'm
different
not
ways.
against it. I just
You know.
I just think we need a true layout of the expectations and, you know, at what point
And the cost.
are you going to ask for somebody to help monitor all this? Because where's the workload going? There's workload we're creating. So who's going to take on that workload? I know he's saying, you know, the coaches will have to just put in for requesting a bus, but that's still adding workload to what we got. So how are we going to monitor that? I mean, I talked to several parents, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm all for that because I'm having to get my kid there by 4 when the ball game's not till 5, and I'm having to take off work where I could just go straight to the game." So you know,
That's one of the things that we need to think of. We can control in county. the
Times, right.
In county, but we can't control when we go to
That's right.
somewhere else.
Yeah.
You can't, but like we talked about a while ago with scheduling, if I am a coach and I know I get my license and I do not want to drive that bus, then if I'm smart, then I'm not going to schedule those out of county games or those games where I have to leave before 4:15. I'm going to be creative in that manner so I can always have a bus driver. And that's what I mean by giving them enough advance notice that if that's not an option to them, they could actually do that. But it would, like Mr. Young said, it would create a little bit of a load because all those trips are gonna come through. And we handle hundreds of trips a month.
I can barely plan to go to my daughter's basketball cheer games. You know, I mean, it's a lot. Just me, one person.
You can't have a job
We
and
looked
follow
at-
those
have we
kids.
looked at
That's
one-
right. That's
You
right.
can't do it.
I know we gave some increases to try to help do this, but if we looked at what other systems are paying their regular bus drivers to do the after-school activities, are we in the ballpark with that, or are we still low? Are we higher than everybody?
No, we're towards the top.
We are?
Yeah. But you gotta remember too, I mean, we're running after-school routes, we're running tutoring, we're running robotics, we're running 21st century.
We're learning
We've
buses
got a
out.
lot going on. I mean, as I pulled in tonight.
He's about to ask for buses. You can tell the way he's talking.
We can't get them in anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
They were still clearing it tiny tonight as I pulled in, and it was 5:50. And so, we've got buses on the road till, from 6 in the morning, we're really about 5:40, they start leaving the shop until 6 o'clock at night. And so, we have them on the road, so we just have to be mindful of that, and that's what this would do. A couple of things that Dr. Strauss and I mentioned and I'm assuming he shared that plan with you, would be they would receive 80%, I'm sorry, they would receive 80% of their supplement, and then maybe 20% after they receive their license, their bus driver license. That was one thing we talked about. And that would be the encourager in this. We even talked about some other systems have done the 100% now, and then as they got their CDL, they gave them a bonus above their supplement. That's been in other systems. So we did talk about those. We talked about paying the driver a set fee if a coach drives, they would receive a set fee, which would allow some of our coaches to gain some access as far as additional dollars to help out. We did talk about that. Just some little things like that. We also talked about what if someone medically can't drive. I don't think you'll mind me sharing, but I'll use Stephen Ball at Ardmore as an example. Coach Ball, who's assistant principal, 2 years ago he was coaching softball, or 3 years ago he's coaching softball, and he decided, okay, I'm gonna get my license when we discussed this in January. He came, he went to get his physical. He has a false eye that where he got knocked out in college, and he could not get a driving physical, so they would not allow him to drive. So he would be excused because the medical doctor said he couldn't. So there would be instances we would have people like that. We would have instances of people with high blood pressure that would be flat. Lots of different things like that would cause people to.
What are you going to do when you have coaches that say, I don't want this responsibility. I'm not going to coach anymore. Then you're going to be coming here and say, I can't find a coach.
You're gonna buy a whistle.
That is a
Do you
fear.
do you have a present? Like you gonna tell us?
No, I just wanted basically, and we've talked about it, but basically tonight I just wanted to kind of get input because I looked at the 2019 agreements you had that it looked like it was just for certain, like one coach per team, or if they took 2 buses, it'd be 2 coaches per team. That hasn't seemed to work. I mean, I've done the same thing before and got the same results actually on that. And so we're just looking for one. Do we want to try to pursue this? I mean, it is good to hear that the 415 time period has helped a lot because I always hear about the Elkmont band trip as being the catalyst kind of that started that. But then I think about the other part of this is making sure that if we're going to provide transportation for all competition teams, what that would entail. And I know, the 2 costs for band and football, how much more is that going to cost if I'm taking every baseball team and so forth. But it also goes back to Bradley talking about, if I have 2 players riding back on the basketball team on the bus, that means that coach is going to have to ride back on that bus where they might not have to do that now. So there's a lot to
Just so
this.
you know, back in the day, that is how it worked. Like, all the young kids rode to the basketball games with a coach, and then the coach drove home with him and the one kid whose parents didn't come to the game or whatever. It was empty coming back every time.
When I coached girls basketball, I had my CDL, and it worked out great because summer camp and other little trips I could drive. Didn't have to have a bus driver to do it. They just provided me with a bus. But, yeah, we had to, when, all the varsity girls went home and there were JV players riding back on the bus, we had to ride back to supervise them. So there is a lot to it. So I think two questions. One is, do we want to pursue in some way requiring coaches to get their CDL? I think that's one question overall. Second question is, we feel like it would be the best thing to provide transportation for competition trips. Is that something we want to pursue? And how much is? I know we want to know how much that's going to probably cost. I think I threw out $500,000 the other day. It seems like I used to back in Georgia. We spent like $800,000 or something on trips, but that was just what we spent.
Where'd y'all go?
Well, just a lot of times. Fortunately, I was very pleased to see that the football trips were only $14,000, $15,000. That's a lot less than I thought, and I think we are a lot more localized.
Well, our
here.
wonderful Alabama High School Athletic Association has contributed a lot to that, making you go to 70
Bill
miles
Campbell.
away to play a football game.
Bill Campbell's in our area
And
at one
in that
point.
case, Elkmont, I guess that's the one y'all chartered, that they had to leave at 2:30 to get there on time. Of course, we didn't have a driver phone. I will go back to Bradley's point. I will say this right quick. Our insurance, our vehicle insurance that covers all of our vehicles, the buses included, they do have a provision that allows us to rent as long as it's a 7. We can't do 15 passenger vans and all that, obviously, because that's against state code. But we can rent a 7-passenger SUV, such as a Suburban or any of those. And a lot of our ag programs, like Mr. Green has, when they go to competitions and they carry 3 or 4 kids, they send me the trip stuff. They put it in school do where I can see the trips. And they have a list of things that they have to follow. One is they have to get full insurance from it's a full policy from the rental company. And then I come in and do an additional rider policy on top of that from our insurance. And that covers that teacher so that they can drive that Suburban and only carry 2 or 3 kids.
Don't need a CDL for that, right?
You do not, no, sir. And we put those drivers, all those drivers are on our insurance policy. They're one of our drivers, even though they don't have a CDL, they're still one of our drivers. So the insurance knows who they are. So that helps us in events like Ms. Young was talking about. If we have 2 or 3 kids, that does allow that as an option. And those are, depending on how far they go, we've been fortunate enough to get those. Lauren Graham has done it a lot. Ben, when he was at Elkmont, did it multiple times. So it does happen a lot with their ag programs, especially with smaller numbers.
If we provide this service and the district pays for the buses, this is something that was brought up in Birmingham. They go to the band competition or the football game, and once that's over with, I can take my kid home. I can check my kid out and take it home. But I'm not supposed to check out your kid and take it home. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's what I heard in that meeting. So how are we going to address that? That's just something to think about.
That will be that one child that rides with the coach.
That's
going to be that child that rides back home with the coach.
No, I'm saying, if we got a football game, and my son's playing football, and I check him out, but 3 of his buddies wants to go home with me, I can't check them out legally.
No.
Okay.
Be your child.
So who's responsible? You don't have to answer that now, but that's a question.
Coach.
Who's going to be held responsible when that kid gets to go home with somebody else?
That will be our coaches.
Okay.
They know that. They'll know that. That's going to be some of the planning.
Well, it's going on now, all over the place.
That will be some of the planning that we'll need to do. And before we go to what Bradley said, we probably need to get something in order,
Yeah.
in place, an expectation sheet, because it is needed.
Okay.
We can, of course, continue this discussion and come up with some guidelines. I'm sure you'll probably get some feedback, and you can ask some questions of folks and see, what their responses are. It may give us some direction on where we want to go with this moving forward. Okay, thank you.
Just in thought, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
But the smaller programs, would we require those coaches to get CDLs in the smaller programs, say like golf, track? I don't know what other programs, Beta Club, if they could rent a Suburban without having to have CDLs.
That's what I was thinking.
But then their program, but then who pays for,
Pays for the Suburban.
who pays for the Suburban? Because, I know we're still paying mileage. We're putting mileage on our buses. We're paying for diesel, but they are our buses, so we're not having to rent them per se.
Right, but
to
that's what
drive
Russ was
them.
saying. We've rented them in the past, which the program paid for it. But would we, as a district, not rent that Suburban for them? It'd be the same as us paying for that bus. I'm just asking.
Right, we'd have to.
for the smaller
That could be
programs.
something that we could talk about for sure.
So,
And that'd be something y'all could decide if you didn't
Yeah.
require them.
well,
Get enough coaches driving, just rent a bunch of Suburbans, take that.
yeah. Is it any advantage for a small bus versus a larger bus as far as, other than number of seats?
No,
We talked about mileage and everything else, and it's really
Yeah.
basically, it's the same motor, same engine, everything's basically the same. We've ordered all of our newer special needs buses. They're not mini buses anymore. Because of our growing population of special needs students here in our district, we've ordered those larger. So the capacity, if you remember the old special needs bus that we all saw at our school,
Yes.
held 10 kids, and if you had a wheelchair, it held less. Those buses are gone now. These things they're only about, I think it's 8-foot difference between the two. It's not much.
Gotcha.
They're holding 43 people with 2 wheelchairs.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're using them on trips and stuff now, so it's just a lot, it's not really an advantage, there's no
Gotcha.
difference.
I was asked the question, that's why I asked, so.
Good question, it's not really. Now, it might make a driver feel better, because they're a little shorter.
You feel like you can drive it, but
You
it's.
feel like you're driving a shorter vehicle.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, it's good. Strategic planning discussion. Of course, a lot of you have attended our strategic planning meetings. We do have another one this Thursday at East Limestone High School at 7 o'clock, which will be our final school level meeting. And then we'll start our planning team meeting. Those meetings will start taking place in January. And so I talked to Dr. Maples a little bit. We really need 3 board members to serve on that team. Because we'll have 3 meetings in January is the plan, that we don't need a quorum of board members. We just need 3 board members to represent the board. Dr. Maples?
All right. Do you want to do Kim?
Well, I was going to see which one. I was going to see if which we could get
Anybody
the 3.
interested in doing the strategic planning?
I'd be interested.
I would be interested.
Well, I'll be in the
Unless one of
third.
Mr. Fudge or Mr. Kilgore. Unless y'all want to be on it.
Do you have any preferences? We all have just been to that one in Tanner. So the main thing is just going over with the community what their plans are and what their goals are for the Limestone County School Board.
What night of the week would this be?
Those are on Thursday nights, I believe.
I can do
Is
that.
that right?
That's, now you're talking about something different, right?
Mm-hmm.
No,
You're talking about something different.
These are in January.
these are in January.
These are the strategic planning. It's a steering committee, basically going over the details. Once we get a major plans, is hammering out the
Got your
details.
surveys in. You got all the comments that Allison took such great notes on.
We're gonna hang up.
Beautiful
stuff in there.
handwriting. There is, we can't have more than 3 because then we would be breaking some
It'd be a meeting then.
laws. Yes. So we do need 3 that are very basically involved and want to participate with that. It's 3 separate ones, and they're all.
Those are Thursday night, the 12th, 19th, and 26th. We're going to have those at Owens and the big room there. So we'll probably have 35 to 40 people there,
I can do it, or I
made
can
up
be
of
an
the
alternate if
community,
somebody can't, that's doing it.
So we have a lot of interest. So we
Yeah, I
need
mean,
to.
I think-
which is great.
Yes. So we do need to just go over it and.
Draw straws.
Yes.
There you go. Just draw straws, that'd be the simplest thing.
Yeah, I think
I'm
so
good
too.
with that. That doesn't make me any difference.
So we'll have straws after the meeting.
Sounds good.
All right.
Okay.
So that's all. That concludes my report, I believe.
Oh,
So.
I noticed that too.
All right. We have Kim and her report.
My report, we're gonna look at September 30th, 2022. So we got our audit report tonight. We're gonna talk about this fiscal year because it came to an end.
Gracious, where is it? Oh, there it is.
I think Mr. Chris will like, I'll start with the fact that when I did the final calculation for our lawsuit penny that we have to split with between Limestone County, Athens, Madison City, and Huntsville City, and there's a big, long formula for that, and I know I've got 2 new board members, and we'll talk about that sometime, but since we're running a little behind tonight, I'm just gonna hit the highlights. But we got an additional $3.6 million from that after we went back and reallocated. So, if we look at our general fund for the end of the year, we finished, our local sources came in at 124% of what we had budgeted. If you look at our expenses, we were less. We were about 99.5% of what we had budgeted. Last year in 2021, if you looked at our local revenue, we ended at 26.8. But then you have to also consider we moved $6 million. We keep that in the capital projects fund, and we did that as well this year. So if you look at the bottom, we need to talk about the fund balance. 1 month fund balance is $8.7 million. And for my 2 new board members, you take the total expenditures and the other financing uses, you add those numbers together, you divide by 12, and that gives you your 1 month operating fund balance based on your budget side.
So we finished the year at 3.72 months of a fund balance. So I went and I said, okay, what's 3 months fund balance? The board's talked about 3 months, keeping a 3 months fund balance before. So if you look at 22, 3 months fund balance in 22 was 26.2 million, okay, and we had 32.6. So that leaves about 6.3. Well, when we got to the end of the year this year, we had ordered buses that weren't here. But now we can pay for those buses out of our fleet renewal, so that won't have to come out of our general fund. But we did order $500,000 worth of furniture that didn't come in for our schools. Remember, the schools gave us their wish list, and we ordered furniture for them. That didn't get here by the end of the year, so I've got to save $500,000 because I've got to pay for it in 23. We had those 22 vehicles that we ordered, the 2022 vehicles that you approved for $128,000, and they didn't come in either. So I've got to save that money so when those vehicles come in. So we're really, we're still struggling with the shortage of everything. But in August every year, we get our Advancement of Technology funds, which has been called, I think since I started almost 5 years ago, I think it's had like 5 different names, and now it's EAT. And
I was wondering why we had something on here called EAT. So
yeah,
that's
what they changed it to now, and that's what I was going. I like Advancement of Technology. I like the old name, but it's been ETF. It's been a lot of, and now it's EAT. So anyway, we get that money in August, and it was $2.5 million, and we have to spend it in 23. So I took that out. But every August we get that. But our EAT money was really a little over $3 million, and we put $1 million of that in our capital projects fund. So that's why it leaves $2.5 million. So when you come down to all that, we've got $3.1 million remaining. So we can move some money over to the capital projects fund like we did last year. Last year we moved $4.75 million. You can leave 3 months based on the economy now and where we're going. We don't know what's going to happen. 3 would probably be safe. Next year, our expenses are a little higher, so our 1 month fund balance is a little bit higher. So
how much is a little bit?
You remember how much a little bit is. 1 month fund balance next year is about $10 million. So it takes
That's a lot.
That's a lot, isn't it? And that where that increase comes from. That comes from the increase, the majority of that.
A lot of salaries.
Salaries. Yeah.
Well, part of that's salaries, but a lot of that, remember, is from the Alabama Connections that passes through. Makes that number go up. Okay. And I have asked the State Department about that, and they told me I have to include that in my calculation for 1 month. So
I think it's okay. We're going to need this.
We're going to need it if anything happens to the economy. So last year we went ahead and moved some money over before I presented the 21 financial statements. I have not moved it over yet because I wanted you as a board to decide and tell me what you're comfortable with moving over, how much fund balance you want to keep in there. Do you want 3 months at the end of 22?
I'd say we want 3 months at the end of based on the 22 fiscal budget.
I agree with that.
And so I would say we move the 3.1 million over. That'd be my opinion.
Is everybody comfortable with that? Or if we just move it even 3 million, just to have good round numbers? Or if you want to move 3.1, we'll move 3.1.
You can put those other numbers in there. It's not that
what you
hard.
want? Will that make you happy?
178,000. Yeah. That's 178,000
Make
among
sure I
friends.
see the 10 cents on
Yeah,
there.
there's still a few tweaks, that'll have to be made based on edits and things from the State Department. So I was just going to go.
So what we used to call Advancement in Technology Fund is now called EAT.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Any indication on what that payment will be for this year?
Well, no, not for the 23 budget. No.
Yeah. So they're telling us last year they allocated $282 million in, I guess, EAT money.
Isn't that the weirdest thing?
And right now we have a $750 million balance in that account.
Don't you think they still owe us that half they cut into for us that 1 year?
It did occur to me.
Yeah, I
that
knew
they
you thought
might
about it
should
because I
pay
thought
that
about
part.
when you sent me the screenshots of the balance. I thought, well, they still need to give us that.
They literally could
$1.5
pay
million.
3 times what they paid last year and still have this year's additional funds in the account.
And the great news, they changed it where you can pay for new construction now, so we could certainly put that over if we had the additional funds into new construction.
We got to be, even if we crash for 1 year, you got to be protected by that, right? And then whatever we call that so you don't have proration anymore. I can't remember what he calls that, but anyway, we should be good for 2 years. That third year, I'm scared of.
So if we move the 3.1 over, it's not like we can't get our hands on it if we needed it
That's
for
right.
some reason
Right. If you
anyway,
move
but
it
it
over to
does
capital
designate it
projects,
for
we can move-
capital
there's-
projects.
That's
Yeah,
not
that's
an
essentially
end-all
general
to say
fund
all. You can move it back if
account.
you need
Yeah,
it.
that's
I
right.
mean, that's just, if it goes to capital projects, it can come
Yeah,
back.
we should move it.
So do we have a motion?
You don't.
We
you
don't do a
have to
motion
have-
on this?
You don't have to make a motion on this. You just
Okay.
need to talk about it as a board, and I'll make the adjustment. And
Okay, well, I agree with them moving the whole amount, all the
Okay.
dollars.
178.
Yes.
10.
All right, is that it, Ms. Hubbard?
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving along. Do we have a motion for the consent agenda?
I'll offer a motion.
We have an offer from Mr. Glaze. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Chris, do we have any discussion?
Oh, I'm voting for it.
All those in favor? Unanimously, it passed. Next, we have discussion and approval of personnel actions. Do I have a motion? Mr. Hilliard, do I have a second?
I'll say.
Mr. Young has a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? All those, okay, it passed. Let's see, number 8. It's a lot. Whew. Discussion and approval. Additional pay rate for 21st century staff to an hourly rate written and approved in the 21st century grants for documentation, responsibilities, and requirements as follows. The district coordinator from $33 per hour to $37 per hour. Site coordinator from $31 per hour to $34 per hour. Lead teacher from $29 per hour to $32 per hour. Certified teacher from $27 per hour to $31 per hour. Non-certified teacher, $20 per hour. Instructional assistant from $15 per hour to $20 per hour. Student assistant from $9 per hour to $10 per hour. And bus drivers to $45 per trip.
And there was a correction from your BARF, because on the BARF it was instructional assistant, $15 per hour, but it's correct on the agenda item, so it's $20 per hour instead of 15. So there is a correction there.
Okay. Do I have a motion? Mr. Fudge, do I have a second?
A second.
Mr. Glaze, any discussion?
So this is written into the grant. I mean, this comes from the people that gave us the money.
When they make their grant, it allows you to pay the additional amount, and
And the purpose for the increase in the pay was, with 21st century, there's additional responsibilities and documentation and things that have to be provided to the state department.
I'm all for the increase in pay, but why are we voting on it? If someone else is setting the numbers, someone else is saying how much people are making, why are we voting on it?
Because it has to be included on the salary schedule.
Because it goes through our funds, so that's why we have to vote on it. Okay.
All right. All those in favor? All right, it passes. We have a 2023, 24, and 2024 and 25 12-month employee calendars. Do we have a motion?
I'll motion.
Ms. Kilgore? Do we have a second? Mr. Hilliard, seconds. Do we have any discussion?
Did somebody vote on this one?
Yeah, did the teachers vote on this, what he's asking?
Well, this is 12 months.
No.
They- Okay.
I know.
Yes.
I don't know why we don't put his name on these.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. It has passed. Discussion and approval of ECF-funded mobile hotspot devices and data service from Verizon Wireless at no cost to Limestone County Board of Education. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Glaze?
I'll
Do I-
second.
And Mr. Fudge, a second. Do we have any discussion?
I like the no cost.
You like the no cost? Yes.
You and I are gonna get along well.
All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Discussion and approval of dual enrollment agreement with Motlow State Community College to allow Limestone County school students who reside in Tennessee to participate in dual enrollment. Do I have a motion?
I'll offer.
All right, Mr. Young, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Christ, any discussion?
How is this just because those students would have to pay out-of-state fees to Calhoun if they got their,
Well,
are we not already using Calhoun?
We actually, these are Ardmore
Right,
students
I
that are going from
understand.
Tennessee to Ardmore, and so they're going back to Tennessee for dual enrollment. And so they received, I can't remember what their grant or it's some kind of program.
Get 3 classes per semester at no cost, and some of our students, that's where they plan to attend college too.
Okay, I just don't, I didn't understand why we needed to. Because
I was gonna
kids
say,
can participate in Calhoun, so okay.
we got more than two.
But Tennessee Promise is
Okay.
what it is. I couldn't tell you, it's
Tennessee
Tennessee
Promise,
Promise.
okay.
They can't get,
Yeah.
they don't have
Okay.
accessibility to that.
We have UNA, Calhoun Community College.
Okay. Tennessee, okay. Gotcha, okay.
Okay. All those in favor? It passes unanimously. Discussion and approval, purchase of a 65-inch ViewSonic boards and one 86-inch ViewSonic board from InCare K-12 Technologies for a total cost of $94,439 from ARP Esser and ARP Esser State Reserve. Do I have a motion?
I'll offer.
Mr. Glaze? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Young? Any discussion?
Is this more pass-through money coming from the state than?
These are federal dollars that we received during COVID, and we have till the fall of '24 to spend those funds.
What exactly will these boards be used for? Because we got sold a bill of goods several years ago on some boards.
Okay, they're presentation boards for teachers in the classroom.
Are they gonna be used? Because we got sold a bill of goods
We've
several
had
years
really good.
ago.
We have had really good feedback on the ones that we've installed so far.
Okay, because the ones we bought several years ago, I've been told by many folks that they got used very rarely.
I used the fire out of mine many years ago, thanks for providing them.
Do what? They in the dumpster now?
Yeah,
Okay.
these are pretty easy to use overall. I mean,
Okay.
you probably, I don't know if you weren't at the presentation, strategic plan presentation, but, you know, they got a touch screen
Right.
now, and so.
Okay.
That's good. All those in favor? It passes unanimously. Discussion approval for early release of December 2022 paychecks for the release on December 21st, 2022.
I'll offer.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Fudge seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? It passes unanimously. The next discussion, first reading at policy 6.1.6, students charged with a serious crime as an addition to the current Limestone County Board of Education policy 6.1, admissions and attendance. Do I have a motion?
It's just
Question,
discussion.
discussion.
Oh, it's just a discussion. Oh, it is. Any discussion?
I was just gonna say, I think this gives the system more teeth when someone commits a crime outside of school, a serious crime. It gives us the availability to go ahead and place that child in alternative school. And it really, to me, it shores up our existing policy. Doesn't do away with expulsion or suspension, but we have cases where we have a child outside of school do something that's a heinous crime, for example.
Now, when we place them in an alternative school, this was a question that you and I talked about. They're not allowed to go to extracurricular activities.
That's correct, right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so this will keep that in place.
Right, right. And these, in this case, they wouldn't be allowed on school campus at all, so.
Any discussion? Any questions?
You gonna have a motion to adjourn? So
Yes,
we're not
I know,
gonna
I'm just
leave.
gonna sit here.
If you don't recognize anybody, it doesn't happen.
Okay. As a board, this time of the year, we'd like to recognize those that have really done a lot for the board, preparing, getting all our handouts and our supplies. And we have gotten a gift of appreciation for Ms. Campbell to come up here. All right. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
I'll offer.
Ms. Chris, do we have a second? Do we have any discussion? All those in favor?
Last meeting.